The wind rustled gently through the pines that lined the dusty path up to the Shaw Canyon farmhouse. It was early autumn, and the sun had begun its slow descent behind the hills, casting long golden fingers across the worn porch. On its steps sat a little girl, legs crossed, a threadbare stuffed bear clutched in one arm, and wide, wondering eyes fixated on the silhouette coming up the dirt road. He walked like someone who had spent a lifetime carrying weight no one else could see. Boots dusty, shoulders squared, and eyes that scanned the land like it was both a battlefield and a memory. His name was Elias Monroe, a K-9 handler recently returned from his final mission. In his left hand, a small black and tan puppy squirmed gently, peeking out from the opening of his tactical jacket. Lena, 6 years old, stood abruptly when she saw him, her feet hitting the wood of the porch with a dull thud. "Daddy?" she whispered, uncertain for a moment whether this was the real thing or another dream from one of the nights she waited too long by the window. But then he smiled. Not the kind of smile worn in family portraits or holiday cards. It was the kind of smile that tried to be strong but cracked with the weight of what it had seen. And Lena ran. She collided with his legs, hugging him tight, burying her face into the scratchy fabric of his jacket. He knelt, pulling her close, and kissed the crown of her hair. Then, gently, he nudged the jacket open further. Out popped a head, ears too big, eyes too curious, and a nose already sniffing the scent of something familiar. Safety. Lena gasped. "A puppy?" She beamed, her fingers twitching with the urge to hold it. "This," Elias said, setting the puppy down between them, "is Alpha. I found him near the edge of the base. They said he wasn't fit for service. Too curious. Too soft-hearted. But I think maybe he's perfect for something else." Lena cupped the tiny creature's face in her hands. Alpha licked her nose, his tail wagging like a flag in the wind. And just like that, in the span of seconds, a bond was forged. Elias watched the two with a strange expression, pride laced with something quieter. He sat down beside them, pulling something from his chest pocket. It was a small silver tag. Dog tag. He pressed it into Lena's hand. "This is mine," he said softly. "Keep it close. Always." "But why?" Lena asked, tilting her head. Elias hesitated, his jaw tightening. "Because life doesn't always let us say goodbye the way we want to. And if one day I don't come back, you'll still have a part of me." The words hung in the air, too heavy for a 6-year-old to carry. But something in Lena, that quiet, knowing place all children have, understood just enough. She clutched the tag and nodded solemnly. That night, Alpha curled at her feet as she slept. Her tiny fingers still wrapped around the chain of the tag, and a new photo hung on the wall. Elias, Lena, and Alpha. All three facing the camera. All three unaware of the storm the future had already begun to brew. The days that followed felt like slow honey, warm and golden. Lena taught Alpha how to chase tennis balls through the orchard. She read him stories under a tree that split at the middle like a wishbone. At night, when the wind howled through the canyons and the farmhouse creaked, Alpha would hop onto her bed, placing his head protectively on her belly. Elias watched them from the kitchen window sometimes, a mug of black coffee in hand, but his smile faded a little more each morning. The phone rang more often. The news never brought comfort. Then, one morning, the truck came. 2 men in uniform, hats in hands, one carrying a sealed envelope. Lena didn't understand at first. She thought they were visitors. She offered them lemonade. It wasn't until her mother collapsed on the front steps, screaming into her knees, that reality punctured the innocence. Her father was missing. MIA. No body. No goodbye. Only a folded flag. And an echo. Alpha whimpered that night. He refused his food. He scratched the back door until his paws bled. And then, the next morning, he was gone. Her mother told her the dog had been sent away. "We can't afford another mouth," she said flatly, mascara bleeding down her cheeks. Lena screamed. She ran to the spot where the truck had been. Her knees hit the gravel. Her fists pounded the dirt. "You promised!" she cried into the empty wind. But there was no one to hear it. Only the hills, the pines, and the photograph on the wall that would never be updated again. For years, Lena kept the dog tag on a chain under her shirt. She never took it off. Not at school. Not in bed. Not even in the shower. The farmhouse fell into disrepair. Her mother moved them to a smaller place in town. Then disappeared, entirely, one fall. Leaving Lena in the care of a distant aunt who treated grief like a nuisance. No one ever brought up the dog. No one ever mentioned the man with the cracked smile. But every year, on the same day, Lena would return to the old orchard, kneel beside the split tree, and whisper, "If you're out there, Alpha, come home." And somewhere, deep in the wild, a grown dog with worn pads and tired eyes would pause, nose to the wind, ears twitching, as if remembering a voice from a dream long past. 7 years later, the town of Ashwood had changed. Strip malls had replaced fields, and automated drones whirred overhead in place of birdsong. But for Lena Monroe, now 13, time didn't move forward. It coiled like an old spring, wound too tightly around memories she couldn't escape. She walked the edges of the orphanage yard, now her third in 2 years. Her shoes were scuffed, her sleeves too short. But beneath her faded hoodie hung the same silver tag, dulled with time, but never forgotten. Lena didn't speak much. She drew. Sketches of dogs, always the same shape, same eyes, same posture, lined the worn pages of her journal. She refused to name them. It was always just him. Alpha. She had asked around, checked online forums about shelters and military K9s. Nothing. No record of a dog named Alpha from her father's base. Almost like he never existed, until one September afternoon. The orphanage director announced that a rescue group was bringing in a batch of strays found after a wildfire. Lena didn't care, until she heard the word military. Some of these dogs were trained, maybe even used in black ops units. We'll house them temporarily. Stay clear. Some are aggressive. Her pencil snapped mid-sketch. That night, as the truck rolled into the side lot, Lena pressed her face to the window. There were crates, 12 in total. Some dogs barked, others paced restlessly. But one, just one, sat perfectly still in the far back corner. Silent, ears up, eyes scanning. And when the driver opened his cage, it didn't bolt. It stepped down, slowly, deliberately, and looked up, straight at Lena's window. Their eyes locked. The breath caught in her throat. Her knees wobbled. Her hand rose slowly to her neck, clutching the tag through the fabric. The next morning, the staff warned, "Avoid the big shepherd. Cage 11. He's different." Lena ignored them. She walked through the kennel quietly, heart pounding. When she reached cage 11, she stopped. The dog sat, not snarling, not pacing, just watching. Her. She crouched, her fingers barely touching the chain-link fence. "I know you," she whispered. No bark, no growl, just a slow, deliberate wag of the tail. That night, a storm broke across Ashwood. Lightning cracked over the hills. Rain hammered the rooftop. The dogs howled. All except one. Lena tiptoed down the hallway, barefoot and trembling. She found the keys. She opened cage 11. He didn't move at first, just stared at her. Then he stepped forward, pressed his forehead to hers, and sat. In his mouth, something cold. A metal chain. She gasped, took it, wiped the mud. It was a dog tag. Her father's name, etched on the front. But this one had a strange marking on the back. A number. K9074. The tag she had, her childhood one, had only the name. Her fingers trembled. 2 tags. 1 name. She looked up. Alpha? The dog barked once. Clear. Sharp. Like a soldier reporting for duty. The dog tag weighed heavier in Lena's hand than it should have. She turned it over again and again under the flashlight's pale beam. That night, her breath caught somewhere between disbelief and recognition. K9074. The number wasn't just a serial. It was a trail. A breadcrumb Elias Monroe had never meant to leave, or perhaps had always hoped someone would find. Alpha, because there was no doubt now it was him, slept beside her bed, unmoving save the occasional twitch of his ear at a creak in the hallway, as if even now he was standing guard, protecting her. In the early hours, Lena snuck to the orphanage's old records room. She knew the system. The staff were predictable. She typed K9074 military base into an ancient computer. Most of what came up were redacted files, but one link led her to a decommissioned airstrip an hour outside Ashwood, Fort Daxton. The file said the base was used for high-risk training operations involving human canine units. Abandoned 10 years ago. Off limits. Perfect. Lena didn't wait. The next Saturday she packed her worn backpack, water bottle, her sketch journal, flashlight, a roll of dog biscuits. She tucked both tags into her boot. Alpha padded beside her, silent, ready. The bus dropped them at the edge of the pine woods. From there, they walked. The deeper they went, the more nature reclaimed what man had built. The airstrip had cracked from years of ice and root. Vines curled around rusted fencing. But beyond the chain link, they saw it. The silhouette of the old hangar, wide and gray like a sleeping giant. As they approached, Alpha slowed. He sniffed, then growled. Not at danger, at memory. Inside the hangar was darkness. Lena flicked on her flashlight. Old crates, torn netting, broken kennels, bite marks still etched into the corners. Then she saw it. A faded bulletin board, half burned at the edges, but with papers still pinned to it. She stepped closer. Unit. Roster. Operation. Hallowed Echo. There, next to Elias Monroe's name, was a matching number. K9074. Codename. Alpha. Her knees buckled. Alpha whined softly, brushing against her. She turned to him. You were his real partner, not just a puppy. You were trained. You fought. He looked at her, unmoving. Behind the crates, a sound, a metallic clink. Lena spun. Alpha stepped in front of her. A shadow emerged. A man. Older, limping slightly, in a faded uniform jacket. I figured someone would come one day, he said. Who are you? Lena demanded. Sergeant Boone. I ran ops here, back when this place still had a name. He looked down at Alpha. Still alive? Huh, boy? Damn. They said you were dead. He sat slowly, pulling a battered flask from his coat. Your father was the only one who didn't give up when the mission failed. Everyone else pulled out. But he stayed. To find Alpha. We thought both died in that canyon. He looked at Lena. You must be his kid. For hours, Boone spoke. Of covert missions. Of an ambush no one saw coming. Of a final radio call Elias made. If I don't make it, tell her we kept the promise. They never recovered the body. But Alpha showed up 6 months later. Half dead. Collapsed at the gate of a rescue shelter 2 counties south. No tag, no microchip. Just the training that wouldn't quit. Why didn't anyone tell me? Lena asked. Boone laughed bitterly. Because they buried the whole operation, wiped the records, said it never happened. Lena stood. She walked to a corner desk. In the bottom drawer, she found it. A sealed envelope with her father's name, addressed to her, dated a week before he vanished. With trembling fingers, she opened it. My dearest Lena, if this reaches you, Then you've found Alpha. You've always been braver than you knew. They'll say I went missing. That's not the whole truth. Alpha is more than a dog. He's family. He's memory. He's everything I've ever done right. I hope one day he finds his way home to you. And when he does, I hope he brings with him more than just his loyalty. I hope he brings you peace. Love you always, Dad. Tears blurred the edges of the page. Lena clutched the letter to her chest, and Alpha pressed against her side, quiet and still. But it wasn't over. Boone stood and handed her something else. A flash drive. Your dad recorded everything. Mission footage. Logs. I never turned it in. I didn't trust the people up top. Maybe now it's time someone tells the truth. They left Fort Daxton under the setting sun. Back at the orphanage, Lena loaded the flash drive. The footage was grainy, but clear enough. She saw her father, his final words, his stand, and Alpha, refusing to leave his side, as gunfire roared around them. The last frame showed Elias pressing something into Alpha's mouth. A dog tag. A message. A promise carried across time, blood, and silence. Lena sat back, tears on her cheeks. Alpha lay at her feet watching her. She reached down, cradled his head. Welcome home, soldier. The days after Fort Daxton were not quiet. Something inside Lena had changed. Not just the weight of the truth, but the fire of it. It burned in her chest when she walked the orphanage halls, when she watched the world go about its routine, oblivious. She had held proof of loyalty, of silence, of cover-ups. And now, she had a choice. Bury it again, or make it heard. But where does a 13-year-old girl with no family and a half-wild war dog start a war against silence? With a whisper. With a memory. With a story. She started by transcribing every entry on the flash drive. Logs from her father, field notes, even Alpha's training routines. She created a blog under a fake name, The Soldier's Promise. At first, it had no readers, but then she uploaded one still image, the final frame of the video. Her father's hand on Alpha's head, a dog tag between his teeth. It went viral in 3 days. The military denied everything. They called it emotional fabrication, unauthorized access to defunct records. But the internet had already decided. Artists recreated the image. Journalists picked apart every file she posted. Veterans messaged her, claiming they had heard whispers of Operation Hallowed Echo. Someone mailed her an old unit patch. Another sent a recording of a radio frequency only K9 handlers used. One that echoed the same final call. Protect the girl. Code Echo 4. She knows. At night, Lena sat on the roof of the orphanage. Alpha curled beside her, watching the lights of the town flicker. She talked to him like she used to when she was 6, only now the stories were different. Now, they were missions. Now, they were plans. I think they know who I am, she whispered one night. Alpha's ears twitched. They're watching. But so am I. One evening, a letter arrived at the orphanage. No return address. Just a wax seal pressed into the envelope. Inside was a photo. A girl. Much younger. Holding a leash. Behind her stood Elias Monroe and Alpha, the earliest known photo of them in uniform. Scrawled on the back, "Truth is a stubborn dog. It always finds its way home." Everything changed the night someone broke into the orphanage. Lena had been asleep on the floor of the records room. A habit now. Alpha pressed against the door. The sound of glass. A footstep. Alpha was up before she was fully awake. A growl unlike any she had ever heard. She peered through the shelves and saw them. 2 figures. Black masks. Silent, moving straight toward the desk where she'd kept the original flash drive. Alpha didn't bark. He launched. The crash echoed through the building. Lena scrambled, grabbing the drive and stuffing it into her boot. One figure tried to reach for her, but a shadow leapt between them. Teeth. Blood. Screams. then sirens. They ran. The police never found the intruders. But the media did. Security footage from the orphanage leaked. Footage of Alpha standing over Lena, unmoving, guarding, waiting until help arrived. Suddenly, he wasn't just a dog. He was the dog. And Lena? She was the girl who survived an attempted disappearance. Weeks passed. The government still denied. But more files surfaced. Someone anonymous leaked mission rosters. Former handlers posted videos backing her claims. A retired general broke silence in a podcast, stating, "I was told Elias Monroe died. Now I'm not so sure that wasn't intentional." The public turned. People demanded an inquiry. Veterans rallied. And one morning, Lena received a phone call from a woman who identified herself only as Haven. "Your father saved my son," she said. "He was never supposed to go back in, but he did, because Alpha heard something, and Elias believed him. That's why they stayed." She paused. "I have something for you. Meet me at Shaw Canyon. Come alone." It had been years since Lena returned to the orchard, but it was all still there. The tree that split like a wishbone, the sagging porch, the silence that remembered things people forgot. She found the woman there. Gray hair, strong hands, eyes that knew war. "I was communications," Haven said. "Your father's last message never made it into the official logs. They said the signal was lost. That was a lie." She handed Lena a small black cassette tape. She took it home, played it. Elias Monroe. Echo 4. "If she finds this, then Alpha made it. Tell her it wasn't for nothing. Tell her this was always the plan. She was always the plan." Lena didn't cry. She smiled. For the first time in years. Alpha nuzzled her arm. She stood on the Capitol steps 1 month later. Not as an orphan, not as a victim, but as a witness. She gave testimony. She handed over the files. She played the final message. People listened. Alpha stood beside her, ears perked, tail still. They asked what she wanted from the inquiry. Lena answered, "Nothing. Except the truth on the record. My father didn't disappear. He stayed. And his dog remembered." She walked off the steps to a crowd that rose in silence. And as she reached the bottom, a little boy stepped forward and handed her a drawing. A sketch of Alpha, standing tall, beside a soldier made of stars. That night, back at the orchard, Lena wrote the last post on her blog. He was never just a dog. He was a compass, a shield, a whisper in the dark that something remembered me when the world forgot. Alpha didn't just find his way home. He brought the whole truth with him. And somewhere, my father is still proud. Alpha lay beneath her feet, and the whisper of memory settled into something deeper. Peace. Autumn returned to Shaw Canyon with its usual quiet majesty. Gold leaves carpeting the porch steps, wind whispering through the pines, and the orchard holding its breath in a world that had finally begun to listen. Lena was no longer just a girl with a story. She was the echo of a legacy. The youngest voice ever to testify before the Senate's Military Ethics Subcommittee. But beyond headlines and hashtags, she remained what she had always been. A daughter searching for her father. And a girl following the trail of a dog who never forgot her. One chilly morning, a rusted green pickup truck pulled into the orchard's long-abandoned drive. A figure stepped out. Sergeant Boone. He hadn't spoken since Fort Daxton, but he held something in his hand. A yellowing folder bound by twine. "Found this," he muttered. "Was hidden in a footlocker beneath the East Barracks. It had your father's name on it." Inside were 3 things. A sealed envelope, a faded photo of Lena as a toddler in her father's arms, and a map, hand-drawn, annotated, and marked with a red X deep within the canyon. She stared at it. "What's there?" Boone looked grim. "The place they took him." where he made his last stand. Lena didn't hesitate. 2 days later, she and Alpha stood at the canyon rim, wind tugging at her jacket, boots sunk deep into red earth. They followed the path outlined on the map. Alpha led with familiar instinct, not as a stray, but as a soldier retracing the trail of duty. The red X wasn't a metaphor. It marked the entrance of a collapsed outpost, buried under brush and stone. Lena cleared it with her hands, bruised and bleeding, until she found the hatch beneath. Rust groaned as it opened. Inside, they found a bunker, silent, still intact, untouched by time. Emergency lights flickered to life. Dust danced like ghosts. Lena crept forward. On the wall, a bulletin board, photos, maps, and a nameplate. K9 Base, Echo 4 Command Unit. She opened a locked cabinet. Inside was a small chest. Her fingers trembled as she unlatched it. It held a handwritten journal, Elias Monroe's. The journal began before the war. Sketches of Alpha as a pup, notes on training, lessons about loyalty, about teaching a dog to hear not just commands, but truth. Then came the darker entries. Paranoia. Orders that made no sense. Missions erased before they began. If they find this, they'll destroy it. But if she finds it, maybe she'll understand that the war wasn't about territory. It was about who we become when the orders stop making sense. Alpha knew before I did. He always knew. The final page held a single line. Alpha goes home if I can't. He'll know the way. Lena closed the journal. I found it, Dad, she whispered. I found everything. She and Alpha camped that night beside the bunker, under a sky stitched with stars. She built a fire and read aloud from the journal, her voice calm, steady, filled with the weight of time. Alpha rested his head on her lap. News of the journal's discovery rocked the nation. Documentarians begged for interviews. Museums offered to archive it. But Lena refused. Instead, she launched the Echo Foundation, a program for veterans and retired K9 units, offering sanctuary, rehabilitation, and the one thing they were never promised: peace. The orchard became its heart. Shaw Canyon's crumbling house was rebuilt by volunteers, soldiers, dog trainers, families of the forgotten. Each room named after a fallen handler. The barn became a training center. And in the orchard clearing, beneath the split tree, Lena placed a stone. On it, Elias Monroe and K9 Alpha. They never left the mission. The mission left them. But they came home anyway. 5 years passed. Lena, now 18, stood before a class of new recruits at the foundation. Behind her, Alpha, graying now, eyes softer but still alert. She held the journal in one hand. Loyalty isn't obedience, she said. It's remembering who you protect, even when the world forgets their name. A pause. That's what my father taught me. That's what Alpha lived. Alpha passed peacefully a month later. In his sleep. Head on the porch, nose turned toward the orchard. Lena buried him beside the split tree. She didn't write a speech. She just sat beside the grave, held both dog tags in her hand, her father's and Alpha's, and whispered, "You kept the promise. Both of you." That night, a new pup arrived at the gate. A rescue, scared, unwanted. The staff brought him in. He refused food, pacing, until he saw Lena. He sat. She knelt. He placed his paw in her hand, and the circle began again. In the end, it wasn't just a story about a dog, a girl, or a war. It was about memory, about the kind of love that guards you, even when the world stops watching, and how sometimes the bravest path home is the one you walk in someone else's paw prints. 2 months after Alpha's passing, the first letter arrived. No return address, no postage mark. Just a single phrase typed across the front of the envelope. K9074's memory isn't just loyalty, it's evidence. Inside was a photo, grainy but unmistakable. a military transport vehicle. Desert backdrop. Alpha. Still young. Flanked by two handlers neither Lena recognized. Scrawled on the back, Black Unit 27, codenamed Wraith. Beneath it, a GPS coordinate. Deep in the Nevada exclusion zones. Lena stood at the edge of the Mojave days later, clutching the photo and the only thing that had never failed her. A dog tag, and the last shred of her father's handwriting. The sun scorched her back as she moved across cracked earth. What she found there was not ruins. It was an intact base, buried, forgotten, but still active. The camo netting, the antennae disguised as dead trees. It was military, or something built from it. And at its heart, behind reinforced doors and biometric locks, was a vault marked Biological Assets, Tier 4 clearance only. She wasn't alone. A man stepped out of the shade. Gray beard. Familiar limp. Boone. "Thought I'd find you here," he muttered. "You knew?" He nodded slowly. "Not all of it. Just enough to know they weren't done with Alpha. Not after what he survived." Together, they forced the door. Inside was a refrigerated lab, humming low. And in the far corner, sealed in a biocontainment pod, a strand of fur, tagged K9074. Next to it, bloodwork samples, old microchip logs, and a single line on a clipboard. DNA match. 98.7%. Confirmed subject identity. Alpha. Elias Monroe, K9 handler. Not fit for public use. Memory reactive traits still present. Lena stared. They knew it was him. They knew the whole time. Boone's jaw clenched. And they covered it. Because Alpha didn't just return. He remembered. Where he'd been. Who heard him. Who gave the orders. It wasn't just about a dog now. It was about a program. One designed to weaponize loyalty. To train not just obedience, but emotional memory into elite canines. Alpha had been one of the few to survive the process. And Elias? He had stumbled too close to the truth. Refused to abandon his dog. Chose honor over secrecy. It cost him everything. Lena leaked the files. This time, not through a blog, but a global press conference. She played a video recovered from the Wraith facility's server. Alpha lying injured after a failed mission, dragging himself toward a distant signal beacon. The beacon had Elias's call sign encoded in it. The room went silent. Tears fell. The footage ended with Alpha collapsing beside a weathered road sign that read, "Home, 17 miles." Fallout was immediate. Congressional hearings reopened. Military officials were subpoenaed. Whistleblowers came forward. They called it the Alpha Files. For Lena, it was more than vindication. It was justice for Elias. For Alpha. For every soul left behind in the shadows. She returned to Shaw Canyon as snow began to fall. The Foundation now had over a dozen satellite sanctuaries. Hundreds of retired K9s. Dozens of rescued handlers. But her room remained the same. 2 tags hung by her window. And beneath them, a new envelope sat. From a DNA registry. Her hand trembled as she opened it. Subject Lena Monroe. DNA match to Elias Monroe. 99.999% secondary match. Found, tissue sample. Alpha, K9074. Contains unique trace human cell imprint. Conclusion. Biomemory transference detected. Subject retained final environmental memory imprint. She blinked. Boone entered behind her. What does it mean? Lena looked out the window. It means... Alpha didn't just remember. He carried part of Dad with him. Weeks later, she stood before a new generation at the Echo Foundation, beside a monument etched with fresh words. Here lies the soldier who never left his post. Here lies the dog who brought him home. Memory is the battlefield, and love is the mission. Lena paused. A young pup barked playfully behind her. She turned, smiled, and whispered, "Ready for your first lesson?" They said a dog couldn't carry a legacy. They were wrong. Because sometimes, when the body can't return, the soul sends its shadow ahead. Spring unfurled quietly over Shaw Canyon. The orchard bloomed again. Pink blossoms breaking through branches that once knew nothing but silence. The wind carried no secrets now, only stories. Lena stood beside a newly erected marker beneath the split tree. Alpha's resting place was freshly turned, framed by wildflowers and a low stone wall. A polished plaque gleamed in the morning light. Alpha. Not all soldiers walk on 2 legs, but some still carry the weight of war on 4. Beside it, another stone. One she'd commissioned only after the last hearing closed, when truth had finally taken root. Elias Monroe, father, handler, protector. Home is not a place. It's a promise kept. The town had come to honor them. A quiet memorial, attended not by generals but by farmers, teachers, fellow handlers, and children who had once been orphans. The only uniform worn that day was by a retired K-9 named Blitz, who sat silently beside the monument. And in Lena's hands, a medal. The Medal of Honor, posthumous, awarded to Elias Monroe, and the unit valor tag presented to Alpha, framed with the words, "For courage in silence and loyalty beyond command." That night, at the old base, now converted into a sanctuary and museum, Lena stood at a podium in the main hall. She unveiled a sculpture, bronze, larger than life. Alpha and Elias, side by side. One kneeling, the other sitting tall. The dog's eyes looked straight ahead, as if still on watch. Carved into the pedestal, the echo that returned. Lena didn't speak much that night. She didn't have to. Instead, she walked out to the porch of the rebuilt house on the orchard's edge. The same house where she had once waited for someone who never came home. Now it held framed photos, field reports, sketches, awards, and a quiet joy. She sat in the old rocking chair. Beside her, a new German Shepherd pup. Younger, wide-eyed. But something in his gaze felt ancient. Like memory had found another vessel. She looked down, smiled. "I think you've got big paws to fill." The pup wagged his tail. Lena turned her gaze toward the horizon. The sun was setting in streaks of orange and gold, folding behind the pines. And for a long time, nothing stirred, not even the wind. Just a girl, just a dog, and a silence that didn't ache anymore. A silence that stood watch, like loyalty does, forever.